I'll call this meeting of the Energy Utilities and Technology Committee to order. I am State Senator Mark Lawrence from Southern York County. I represent the towns of South Berwick, Elliott, Kittery, York, and Ogunquit. I am the Senate Chair of the committee, and I'm going to start over here on my right and have members introduce themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nathan Wadsworth. I represent House District 82.
Good afternoon. My name is Representative Kilton Webb, representing Durham, Pownell, and parts of Bowdoin, Lisbon, and Thompson.
Good afternoon. My name is Reagan Paul. I represent House District 37 in Waldo County.
Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Sachs, proud to be House Chair of EUT and representing the good people of Freeport, Maine in House District 102.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Foster. I represent District 32, which includes the towns of Dexter, Garland, Charleston, Exeter, Stetson, and a part of Bradford.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matthew McIntyre, humbly and proudly serving the good people of House District 18.
Great. So we're going to start off with our first bill, which is LD. We're taking them out of order. It's going to be the Jay Water District first, the Ogunquit Sewer District second, and then a simple bill 838 third. Okay, so we'll start off with Jay, and I'll recognize, speaking for the sponsor, Senator Timberlake on LD 2041, an act to eliminate the debt limit of the North Jay Water District. Senator Timberlake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for letting me present this bill. My sister would love to be here to present it, and but she's taking her husband down to Dana-Farber this afternoon for some more tests. And so I told her that I would do it, and I would try to do a good job and make her proud. So you guys, if you just want to just pass this right now, we won't have to bother. All right. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and honorable members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to present LD 2041, an act to eliminate the debt limit of the North Jay Water District. As the representative of Livermore Falls, Sheila Lyman, Jay, and part of Livermore, I respectfully urge you to support this emergency proposal because it addresses the real and urgent health and safety issue in the community. This is an emergency proposal to remove the current debt limit of $900,000 from the North Jay Water District's charter, so the district may borrow money to fund a major infrastructure project as soon as possible. The project is to replace the water main. It is projected to cost approximately $11 million. This comes after numerous water main breaks in recent years, each of which created serious risk to public health. Stepping back, North Jay Water District was incorporated in 1947 with a debt limit of $100,000. The debt limit has been changed twice already, with the last change being made in 2003. Now, this proposal is to eliminate the debt limit so the district can operate without having to come back to the legislature for this purpose again and again. The North Jay Water District is ultimately responsible for its finances and accountable to its customers and ratepayers. There is no question that the North Jay Water District water main needs to be replaced and that the work is necessary. The district has experienced multiple water main breaks in recent years, and each break causes a public health problem and the need for emergency repairs. I trust that the North Jay Water District is lining up the proper work to ensure safe drinking water. My role here is to make sure that the district legislative is granted charter is not an obstacle to funding opportunities through the Maine Bond Bank or other lenders. And two, the charter is not an obstacle to provide safe drinking water for the people and the businesses served in the North Jay Water District. Again, this is an emergency legislation. So if you can remove the debt limit of $900,000 from the North Jay Water District charter and allow the district to borrow money to replace the aged water main as soon as possible, given the district's need to borrow the money, bid the project, and the time for the construction itself, lifting the debt limit is the first essential step and must be addressed as soon as possible. I respectfully request that you support this legislation And thank you for your consideration, Representative Sheila Lyman. And don't ask me a lot of questions, but there's some people coming up behind me that can answer, I think, anything you need to know. But thank you all very much for listening.
Other questions for Senator Timberlake? Seeing none, thank you, Senator.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, are there any co-sponsors who wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll go to proponents, and I understand Mr. Wright is here. Come on up. You would just introduce yourself to the committee, tell us where you live and who you're representing.
Yep. Could you repeat that again?
Introduce yourself to the committee, tell us
Okay.
where you live and who you're representing if you're representing an organization.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Ben Wright, the superintendent of North Jay Water District. I live in Jay, Maine.
Great.
That's
So
it.
go for it. You
Okay.
have 3 minutes.
All right. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and honorable members of the Energy Utilities and Technology Committee. My name is Benjamin Wright. I am the superintendent of North Jay Water District. I have been in this position for 3 years now, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to submit this testimony in support of LD 2041, an act to eliminate the debt limit of the North Jay Water District. And thank you to Representative Lyman for sponsoring this bill. The goal of the North Jay Water District is to eliminate our current debt limit of $900,000 from our charter so we can borrow the money to fund an estimated $11 million infrastructure project to replace the main distribution water main that feeds the entire system. The planning phase for this project is when we realized that the debt limit would be an obstacle. Some history about the North Jay Water District. It was incorporated in 1947 to provide the village of North Jay potable drinking water. The North Jay Water District, Jay Village Water District, and Livermore Falls Water Districts are all independent utilities that service different areas of the town of Jay, each governed by the PUC and our own individual boards of trustees. When incorporated, the North Jay Water District was authorized to borrow $100,000. That limit has been increased over time to the current debt limit of $900,000 in 2003. Let's see here. Notably, Jay Village Water District has already had its debt limit eliminated by the legislative amendment that was in 1969. The North Jay Water District needs to replace that main and be fully replaced. It's old, dating back to the 40s, and is made of low-grade asbestos cement pipe that it becomes very brittle over time. We have had 15 main breaks in the last 10 years, and 6 of those happened in the last 3 years. Each water main break creates a significant public health risk and has the potential for bacteria and asbestos fibers to enter the drinking water supply. And let's see. Each water main break also creates an expensive construction emergency for the district. Locating emergency crews to work on State Route 4 is costly and something that can not always be done quickly. In the last 2 years, the district has just spent under $200,000 on emergency.
Excuse me, does somebody have a phone on? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. In the last 2 years, we've spent $200,000 on emergency repairs and paving. The district was planning to do a water main replacement in this project in 2026. However, because of the $900,000 debt limit, the district will not be able to borrow this money for the project through the Maine Municipal Bond Bank / the Maine Drinking Water Program State Revolving Loan Program as planned, or any other lender until the debt limit is resolved. The original plan was for the engineers to bid the project in December of 2025. Now the plan is for engineers to delay bidding the project until it is clear the district can borrow the money. Other local water districts have completed similar infrastructure projects, and that our infrastructure of the North Jay Water District is among the oldest in our region. The North Jay Water District is ultimately accountable to its customers. We do not take lightly the prospect of borrowing for this project. We do know the project needs to be done and that the $900,000 debt limit is a barrier. I respectfully request that you support this legislation to eliminate the debt limit in the North J Water District Charter so we can borrow the money and begin replacement of the water main. I will do my best to address any questions should they arise. Thank you for your consideration.
Are there questions for Mr. Wright? Representative Sachs and then Representative Kessler.
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Wright, for being here this afternoon. So because the request is to completely eliminate the debt limit, do you or the select people of North J, has there been a referendum? Has there been some public process around this proposal?
Well, we actually debated about going that route because as a district that's not a part of the town, we have two options. And when we were discussing this originally this summer, the first option was to put out a town referendum vote and have our customers vote to raise it. They can only raise it so much. You cannot eliminate it that route.
Right.
And with the timing, we figured it would be better to go through you guys because by the time they vote on it in November and that goes into effect, it's only going to equate to about like a month or two in difference in time there when they become effective.
Mhm.
And if we can just eliminate it, because that system has almost no upgrades or replacements in the 80-something year history we've been operating. And it's made out of this pretty much all asbestos pipe. And obviously you don't want to keep coming back here or put out a town vote every time you want to do a project. And the costs just keep going up. Like in 2020, this entire project was supposed to be like around $4 million. And it's just increasing every year with labor and materials. So we figured go the legislative route and get it eliminated would be the best option.
Mhm. But may I have a follow-up, Mr. Chair? Thank you.
Yes, Representative Sachs.
Thank you. Completely understand why you're doing this route. Just wondered if there was a public process because this would be on the ratepayers to when you completely eliminate a debt limit, which I understand neighboring communities have, but wondered if there were any public process that had already taken place or is planned.
No, we haven't done any of that.
Okay.
We never went to the select board because we have our own trustees.
Right.
We haven't gone to the select board to put it on a referendum or any of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Representative Kessler.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So it's a two-part question. One is, have you calculated how much this will increase rates for users? And the second part of the question is, has there been discussion around any potential savings opportunities with joining forces with the other water districts in town?
Well, actually, some of those questions, well, to answer the first one regarding rates, we have a rough idea, but like I said, I've been working on this project since pretty much I've been appointed in the last 3 years. And the projects just keep going up and up and up over the years. But currently it's going to be sizable to say the least. And we're hoping we cut the project back from the original amount it was supposed to be. So we're now only doing about 2/3 of the project. So that way we fix our troubled area because it's breaking in the same spot for like a good 30 years, but our records only go back 10 years. But yeah, it's going to be, we got a rough idea of how much we're going to have to increase our rates by. And to answer the one about, I'm guessing you meant consolidation with neighboring districts. Before I was hired, they were actually trying to go that route because you can't find anyone to do a job like that when you're all by yourself and you're on call every day. But they tried getting Wilton Water Department, they're owned and operated by the town. They actually had a town vote for each town. And neither one of them wanted to join together because they would have to raise their rates to match ours. And well, they'd take on our debt and whatnot. So that ultimately didn't go through, to say the least. We tried it for that district, and I do operate the J Village Water District, and they kind of help each other out. So one pays for the truck, one pays for the office. So it's not like they have their own tools and whatnot. They share, and they're not really fully consolidated. They're separate, but they help each other out. That's as close as we can get because none of the neighboring systems want to take us over. So we're kind of stuck in this predicament.
Representative Kessler?
Just to follow, what would be the average monthly increase for a typical customer?
Well, we bill quarterly. At the moment, the last estimate we did, we figured it would probably be an increase of 75% from our current rates of 84.63. But we also buy our water, so that's a costly issue right there. And with the amount of breaks, it's kind of destroyed our budget for the last few years with how much water we've been using compared to previous years. But that's my best guess is 75%. We have Maine Rural Water Association, a nonprofit. They're working on our rates at the moment just to get us in the green for our current budget before we even take on this project. But not looking good.
Other questions? Senator Wadsworth?
Not yet. Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many customers in the North J Water District?
I have 200 and not quite 50. It's about 230. And then we service a couple of larger trailer parks, which get us up to 250, but they're all one account. But household service wise, probably about 250, right around there.
And how long would this debt be amortized for? You know?
I'm hoping for 30 years, but if I can get a 40-year, so that way I can cut the costs down on our yearly budget so we don't have to raise the rates so high. But I've currently gone through quite a few different loan providers like Rural Development, the SRF program from the Maine Drinking Water Program, and 40-year loans probably not the best option because that's where that $11 million figure came from. And when the drinking water program offered us a grant this summer before they took it away, that was currently like $8 million. So and obviously that's after you pay off the loan towards the end, but the RD loan would have been for 40 years and the 30-year loan with the grant would have been the $8 million. But even before the grant, it's the sizable difference.
Thank you.
Other questions? Representative, can I call you Senator? Okay, Representative Paul.
No, never. Thank you for coming today. I just had a question. Was there any thinking as to why the bill request was fully eliminate instead of raising to what the current needs are right now?
Well, I really don't want to play that game, to be honest, because like I said, the cost in the last few years just keeps going up. And I mean, you look at 2020 and what it is now, and that's only for the first half. That's not even for the both halves now. To have it jump up to have it more than double in the 6 years, it's not a good sign to just raise it, because by the time you complete the project, then you close out the loan and start paying it off, you might have to be back here to raise it up again. It just makes more sense to eliminate it now, so you don't have to keep raising it up every few years if you want to keep doing these projects and save yourself some headaches instead of chasing breaks.
Follow up, Representative Paul.
Thank you. And I completely understand the game of, labor rates increasing, everything's, I think, in life increasing, and repairing a farmhouse right now, it's like everything is expensive. I get it. But I guess my question would be, is there a number potentially, again, hypothetically, maybe for the work session, that you guys would be comfortable with? I do have some hesitation about eliminating the debt limit altogether, especially with no seeming community question about that or an agreement like our representative had said before. I should want to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to choose a number just to get us off the ground for our, just to do the first half, the half that we definitely need to do in the next few years, 15 million probably wouldn't be a bad spot, because it gives you a little bit of wiggle room, because who knows what the cost is going to be next year, the year after. We're probably not going to actually do the construction now until, just because that grant got taken away from us, it's probably looking at 2027 at the earliest, and who knows how much the labor is going to be then and the parts. And
Other questions? Representative McIntyre and then Representative Fawn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sir, thank you for being here today and for painting a pretty clear picture. You mentioned a couple times there about a grant being awarded and then removed. Can you shed some insight as to why that happened?
Yeah, so we actually it's kind of an odd situation for as far as the drinking water program grant goes. We apply for it every fall from like September, and then it ends in October, and then you find out if you get it or not by sometime around this, should be in a few weeks actually. But they had, I guess the federal government this spring around March took away some money from the congressional designated spending and reallocated it towards the drinking water program on the state level. And they had extra money, so they basically went through, if you were on the backup list, which we were number 3 on that list out of, I think there's 20 more people behind me. And they basically said, if you want the grant, you have a month to say you want it or not. If not, it's going to the next person. And we took it back in about late May of last year. And going through the process, they Maine Municipal Bond Bank, the people that actually hand you out the money, well, actually are in charge of the money. They basically went through it, and because the fact that we've been in the red because we're paying for engineering out of pocket, so that way we get closer so we can do the construction when we get the money. And you rank higher up on those lists. A lot of them have like ways they figure out who gets the money, and if you have your engineering plans done, you rank higher up on that list. So we're actually 98% done, just about. It's just tweaking it a little bit here and there, but what was I going to say? Oh yeah, basically we've been paying engineering out of pocket for the last few years. We have about 90 something grand in that. Then we have legal fees, and then we have construction cost, obviously. So we lost quite a bit of our savings just from breaks loan, along with engineering and whatnot. So we've been in the red for the past few years anyways, just from the breaks. Then you add in the money you're losing from engineering. They saw that, and even if you give them the excuse that the breaks that this project would fix, the head of the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, or the guy I was speaking to, his last name's McDaniel. He basically told me there's no way the council or whatever it was, the group that actually votes on it, the board meeting, trustees there, they said, he pretty much said there's no way they would approve this grant loan opportunity to you with how much you spent over the years. And we haven't been in the green for, this will be the 4th year in a row as far as making any money, or at least breaking even. That's why it got taken away from us.
Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wright, the North J Water District, how many board members do you have?
We have 3.
Are they all residents of the district?
They are. We actually, up until this past election cycle, because it you vote on them in April. That's how we have it set up for both districts. And the trustees actually just approved that you just have to live inside the town now, because you cannot, for the life of you, find someone to replace a trustee that wants to leave. And all 3 members, though, currently are living in the system. Actually, the chairman of the board of trustees is the guy I took over for, which works out good for us.
And they were all elected by votes
Yep.
from the others in the,
Yep, all in that.
Yes, sir.
You can only vote if you're in that system.
thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other proponents who wish to testify on this bill? Any opponents who wish to testify on this bill? Anyone who wishes to testify neither for nor against this bill, but wishes to provide the committee with additional information? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed.
So moving on to our agenda, we will now open the public hearing of LD 2043, an act to raise the Ogunquit Sewer District debt limit. And with that, we will invite up our colleague, Senator Lawrence.
Over the testimony. Okay, what's that? He would have done it today. He told me at 12:45 he was sending it over. What's that? Okay, so I do apologize. My aide was going to send over testimony at 12:45 on the Ogunquit Sewer District, so I don't have it, but it will be distributed to you when it gets here. I'm here to present this bill on behalf of the Ogunquit Sewer District. Ogunquit is my smallest town, but it is a very economically vigorous town. It has only 900 people who live in it. And my estimation is probably $100 to $200 million of business comes through that town in 4 to 6 months during the summer. So the Ogunquit Sewer District serves a very important role in that area. And it's in a very pristine area, right in Perkins Cove. If you've ever visited Perkins Cove, it's beautiful. And it's set up to the sewer district prevents pollutants from entering the water system. They're asking to expand their debt limit from 12 million to 17 million. And I believe there are people either online or here. We're going to testify after me, and my aide is bringing my testimony in right now to distribute. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or let you hear from the people from the Ogunquit Sewer District.
Does that conclude your testimony, Senator Lawrence?
Concludes my testimony.
Thank you for the written. You know how this committee is. Any questions at this time for Senator Lawrence? Seeing none, we thank you for your time. And I did not see anyone signed up for this bill. I can double check. Is there anyone here who is a proponent of LD 2043? We're going to go look in the hallway, apparently, to see if there's anybody for 2043. Zach, the superintendent, is not in the room. There you go.
They're supposed to be online. Scott's trying to see if they're having trouble getting it back.
I'll check again, but.
Okay. So we'll take a, hopefully momentary recess just for a minute. Get up and stretch while we figure out. Thanks.
Yes, 900 year run. Yep. It's actually one of the few towns that has gone down in the population in my district. And the problem is that so much of the real estate is being converted into commercial use that there's very little residential use. It's actually the highest valued real estate in all of Maine per acre. Yeah. Because there's so much money to be made in that town. Yep. The summer population probably goes up to about 12,000. More about 6 months.
Yeah.
And I think the town is only some small, it's like a little triangle. I believe it's out here. Well, maybe it's my pet name.
All right, we're going to gavel us back in. Continuing the public hearing for 2043. I believe is it Buchner? The superintendent of the Ogunquit Sewer District, I believe, is joining us by Zoom. Here we go. Can you hear me okay, Alex? You're still on mute, so we'll need to help with that. There we go. Hello.
Hello,
Well-
sorry about that. I was a little late with my previous meeting. I was not as prepared as I should have been for this.
Welcome. Please go right ahead.
Yeah, so good afternoon. My name is Alex Buechner, and I'm the superintendent of the Ogunquit Sewer District. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today regarding the proposal increase to the district's debt limit. I'm here in support of increasing the sewer district's debt limit because this action is necessary to fund critical infrastructure upgrades that protect public health and the environment. Much of our sewer infrastructure is aging and was built decades ago. Like many systems across the state, it now requires significant capital investment to meet current environmental standards, prevent system failures, and prepare for rising sea levels, as well as the increased costs of equipment and construction. In 2023, the district's engineering consultants identified $15.1 million of upgrades to the district assets, some of which has been completed or is in the process of being completed. Since 2023, tariffs, inflation, and other factors have resulted in increased costs for all goods and services, including long-term infrastructure construction projects. The existing debt limit restricts the district's ability to finance these long-term improvements responsibly, even when projects are clearly justified and planned. Increasing the debt limit allows the district to spread the cost of majority infrastructure projects over time, match repayment with the useful life of the assets, and avoid sharp, sudden rate increases for customers. Without adequate borrowing authority, the alternative is often deferred maintenance or emergency repairs, both of which are more expensive in the long run. The district will continue to use debt prudently with appropriate oversight, transparency, and long-term financial planning. Increasing the debt limit simply provides the flexibility needed to manage infrastructure responsibly. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the state to approve the increase in sewer district's debt limit. Doing so is proactive, fiscally sound step that will help safeguard our community now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Biegner. Can I ask you two questions if I could?
Absolutely.
Number one is, could you please submit your written testimony, as we have several members who are not available at the moment, and I know they would want to review your testimony.
Yes. I did very last minute through your web portal, so you may have
Perfect.
received it, but if not, I can send it in a different way.
Outstanding. Thank you. We most likely will be able to access it there. And the
Okay.
second question I have for you is similar to the hearing that we just had. Has there been a vote of any elected trustees, or has there been a public referendum regarding this request?
Yeah, it's something that we've definitely discussed with our elected trustees the last probably over a year. And from my understanding, I should add, I'm relatively new to this position the last few years, so I'm still trying to figure out some of the processes on things like this. But I believe once we get the approval on the state end, the next thing would be to do for the town itself to vote on it.
Okay, so you plan, you believe there will be a referendum on the question after this? Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Biegner at this time? Representative Webb?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When was the last time the debt ceiling was raised?
It was not that long ago. It was raised, I believe, from I think it was like maybe 22 or 23. I could be incorrect, but close on that. It was 7 million. It was raised to 12. But with the $15 million in project needs that we've identified, even the 12 million wasn't enough, which is why we're asking for an additional increase.
Any follow-up, Representative? Thank you. Any other questions from the committee at this time? Senator Lawrence?
Yes, I just wanted, Alex, you do serve parts of the town of York too as well. Is that
We do.
correct? Cape Nettic?
Yes,
Okay.
small parts.
Any additional questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you for your time and attention this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on behalf of LD 2043? Again, nobody had signed up, so I'm just double checking. Is there anybody in the room who would like to oppose, come up to provide testimony in opposition of LD 2043? And finally, anybody neither for nor against on 2043? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing for LD 2043. We're going to take a brief 5-minute recess just for the next bill, as we have some folks who need to enter the room. Thanks.
Oh my God, we have a friend. Woman named Mary Marie.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bad house.
Well, he's not that right now.
Montreal.
He hasn't called.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never know.
Yeah,
really, I don't know that age. Once I can. I know, what a time to call, oh. I just sort of lost. Yeah.
Exactly.
In I guess I did as well. I did. Well, that's my thought was thought. Common call, so how's that?
Lord.
But,
Always a name.
The truck's the nickname. Yeah, I was in some.
One development that was on like a triangular property. And they built a
So much
hotel.
that happened at home.
Irrigating the weed on its side, and every room had an open view. I think that's I'll make stuff out. I don't never know.
No, that was there all Oh, if I can. I know. Take care. Oh, yeah, you too.
But anyway, so yes.
Well, when I started. But anyways, no, this one. Your boy doesn't like. You know, turn this off. Oh, really?
Okay, I'm going to bring our attention back here. Committee members, as we're gathering, getting ready for our next public hearing, I wanted to remind you that Lindsay had passed out a list of reports that have been submitted to the committee or are due. So if for any of the reports that we have received to date, if you would like agency presentations on any of those reports, particularly if they have a bill or we have the capacity to report out a bill, please let Lindsay know by the end of the week. Many of them we got in December, so it's a good time to remind you. Some we have not received yet, but for those we have, just so we can keep on top of that. Thank you. For folks in the room, if this is your first time joining us for a public hearing, we do have, if you wish to testify, we do have sign-up sheets over by the window. Please make sure you sign up so that we can hear your testimony this afternoon. That being said, we will open up the public hearing on LD 838 with the new title, an act to create the Maine Clean Energy Authority. And we welcome back our colleague, Senator Lawrence. Welcome.
Thank you very much, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. I am here to present LD 838, which started out as an act to explore public financing. And as you know, on concept drafts, we have to submit some kind of language at least 3 days before. So I'm going to tell you to ignore the language I submitted because we put it together hastily just to get something in there. And in fact, I had changed the title of it to Maine Transmission Authority. And unfortunately, Lindsay didn't catch that when she wrote it up. We wanted to have something for everyone to start with and to start with this discussion. And this is a very important discussion for us to have. It's a very difficult discussion to have. And I read all the comments, either for or against, and I welcome those comments, and I welcome being educated on how, if at all, this could potentially be done. But let me make it clear, the purpose of this bill is to find lower cost alternatives for financing transmission that will cost ratepayers less. That's the specific purpose of this bill. It is not meant to be for clean energy. So you could transport electrons through this produced by, a biomass plant. You could transport something from a natural gas plant, a coal-fired plant, anything through this. It's not meant to be specifically for clean energy. And that's why I wanted the title changed. It's not meant to create state ownership of transmission lines. Okay? That's not the intent of the bill. It's not meant to set up an entity to change what we've done on locating corridors or get rid of that or have the entity locate corridors. It's not meant to give new powers of eminent domain. It's not meant to replace CMP, Versant, the IBEW, or any private developers of transmission lines. What it's meant to do is to create a financing option that we can use state bonding capacity to reduce private sector bonding, to reduce costs to ratepayers for building out transmission. That's all it's intended to do. There are ways, and many states are exploring it, to use public financing to reduce the cost of build out of transmission. I had good conversations with CMP about this. There is something called NYSERDA in New York, which sounds like a new pharmaceutical medication that's going to solve all your problems. But NYSERDA is actually their public financing authority to help in New York, the financing of transmission lines to save ratepayers money. So to echo Representative Foster, it's about reducing rates. It's not about anything else. You've heard me long argue that Maine needs to go from being a consumer of electricity to being an exporter of electricity. That's the way we're going to reduce rates in the state of Maine, and that's the way we're going to grow the economy in the state of Maine. During the first century or so of the state of Maine, we were a huge energy producer. We were the place that people came for energy. We had endless rivers to produce energy. We had endless natural products to produce energy. But in the last century, we have been on the receiving end of energy, and we have to go out of state to buy our energy. We have to go to Massachusetts, wherever, to buy that energy. And we have the ability, if we can develop generation here in Maine, to meet our own needs, but also to overproduce and export that energy to sell to other states so that young Mainers stay in the state, working on generation projects, working on transmission projects, working on all different kinds of things. You look at New England, Maine is huge compared to the rest of New England. We have a lot of land, we have a lot of coastline, we have a lot of area to develop for energy generation. So whether it be, geothermal, whether it be the things I like, floating offshore wind, grid scale solar, whether it be small nuclear reactors, whether it be whatever. If we're going to turn Maine from an energy consumer into an energy producer and sell that energy like Texas does, like Pennsylvania does, like Oklahoma does, like all the other states do, or many other states do, to improve their economy, we have to find a way to get those electrons around Maine and out of Maine. And that means transmission lines. And as we know, transmission lines are funded by ratepayers. And we want to do it in a way that doesn't raise electric rates and finds the cheapest way to do it. So that was the purpose of this bill. I had heard of other states that are doing this. I want to, I'd like to be controversial in my last 3 months of my time in the legislature, but I think it's important for this committee, the PUC, the public advocate, for everybody to begin to explore whether public financing can be used as a way of reducing ratepayers' cost on transmission. And with that, I'd happy to open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Senator Lawrence. Questions at this time for the sponsor? Representative Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm glad to hear that ratepayer consideration is part of your testimony. I guess my question is, there's intent and then there's language.
Yep.
And there's some clarity in the language I would like you to kind of walk me through. So can you walk me through how an unelected board with unlimited bonding power is going to reduce ratepayer costs?
So, for example, FAME, or the Maine State Housing Authority, has bonding capacity, and they reduce the price or the cost to first-time home buyers. Maine State Housing Authority does, by using lower cost interest rates to finance people to buy new homes. So this entity is not going to really own anything. It's just going to be the financing authority, as I think we need to look at first, that it would be able to offer lower cost financing, whether it be through CMP, whether it be through Versant, whether it be through a private developer. However, it has worked out, and this is where I think we all need to be educated and informed of how this works. So it's that lower bonding capacity. When CMP borrows, it borrows at a higher rate. When Versant borrows, it borrows at a higher rate. When home buyers borrow, they borrow at a higher rate. When you borrow for college, you do it at a higher rate, unless you go through a state agency that can use state bonding capacity to reduce that rate. And that's the sole purpose of this bill.
Follow-up question?
I understand that, but I guess my question is for the FAME example that you
Yep.
brought up. Do they have unlimited bonding capacity, or is there a cap?
I don't really know, but I'm not in favor of unlimited. Whatever we decide how to do it,
Okay.
we do it.
Okay, well, that was the language included in the bill, so
Yeah,
that's what speaking.
so
to
as
the
I
language
said,
in-
please ignore the language in the bill
Okay.
because we rushed it through. We got language because Lindsay called me, 2 days before and said, I need language or the bill is going to die.
So to clarify, you would be supportive of a debt limit cap?
Oh, I absolutely would. And I absolutely would support working with CMP, Versant, private developers, IBEW, who currently provides a lot of the labor workforce for this, to find a way. The point is ultimately is to reduce the cost to ratepayers and to get transmission lines built less expensively.
Additional questions for the sponsor? Representative McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Lawrence. I have an abundance of questions right now.
Yep.
Because of what has seemingly changed significantly in your verbal presentation
Yep.
versus what we're seeing here. You indicated that we pulled this together in a rather hasty manner, which I understand
Yep.
that. Who's the we?
So I've been talking to a variety of different people from labor, the environmental community. I've talked to CMP. I've talked with a lot of different people. And unlike other bills, I haven't been able to get a working group to work on this, to come up with language. So I need to have some language come up. I asked one person to put something together based upon like what other states do or things like that. And that's what you see here. I'm not married to this language. The sole purpose is to give something for people to react to and begin the discussion.
Oh, there's a reaction.
Yep, and there's always going to be, because this is not an easy topic.
Yeah, no, it's not. Follow up. Do you think there's sufficient framework here to use this as a vehicle, or is this going to be a complete strike and replace that we're looking at? Because I don't want to waste everybody's time here to support or defend something that
Yep.
isn't even close.
I wouldn't waste your time supporting or defending this language. I would focus on this committee getting around this, getting their heads around this issue and seeing if there is a way that Maine can take advantage of this to reduce ratepayer funding. So it may end up looking very different than this, likely will.
Okay, thank you.
Noted for everybody in the audience. I will also note it was not co-sponsors who worked on whatever that.
Yeah. It was literally last minute, and I had one person who said, can you give me some language? And they tried to come up with something. And that's what I submitted because we needed some language in here. You know, I haven't had a chance to fully explore NYSERDA. That's something that CMP mentioned to me as a good example of, and I haven't had a chance to talk that much with Versant. But I've talked for 2 years now about the ability to use public financing to reduce transmission costs. And we need to get that before the legislature and explore how, if at all, we can do it. If we can't, then we reject the idea.
Other questions for the sponsor, Representative Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Lawrence. So I'm going to assume, although I won't pay any attention to this language, but I'm going to assume that at least the part about requiring union labor will carry over to whatever you come up with.
That's my preference, and I'm sure that would be IEBW's preference. So we shall see.
So can I follow up? Thank you, Madam Chair. So you are also aware, and as I've said before, that one of the realities of situation we have in the state of Maine, as I faced in my past life with large projects, and as the utilities have faced with large projects that they've put together, we are very limited on how much labor is available in the United States, in the state of Maine, union or non-union. So I'm wondering if you have thought about, as you continue down that track, what that may mean for the length of time it may take to develop these projects.
Well, these projects anyway are long-term projects to be developed. And currently they're being constructed, and a lot of them are being constructed with union labor. My intent is not to have this authority be the construction authority. You know, that would be contracted out to who can do it. I understand your concern about the amount of labor in Maine. And I think one of the things when we talk about turning Maine from an energy consumer into an energy producer, we also have to focus on, and I know the Labor Committee has on, how do we build a workforce in Maine that is an energy experienced workforce. So these are long-term goals. There are no simple answers to those. But the only other choice from us, in my opinion, is we say, somebody who consumes other people's electricity rather than generating it ourselves and making money off of it.
Do you have a follow-up, Representative? Okay, thank you. We just go to Representative Webb and then Representative McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said this acronym a couple times, NYSERDA.
NYSERDA.
And what are the letters in that?
I think it's NY, and Kathleen is going to come up and testify. She knows everything about it. But she's going to look it up. I think it's NICERTA, but I'm not too sure.
Okay, thank you.
But there's also other, if you look in my testimony, there's also talk about other states who have done similar projects. And I think that's one of the things we're going to have to explore. What have other states done? How successful has it been? Is it, my goal isn't to replace any contractors, to replace any labor unions. It's to get low cost financing for ratepayers.
All set. Representative McIntyre and then Representative Geiger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my final one for this phase of the discussion. Page 2 of the current language, which I understand is subject. You list out the prescribed membership or the envisioned membership of the future board of said entity. A concern I have is I'd like to have a little more focus on eligibility criteria for membership and specifically exclusion of certain people, certain influencing individuals. So would you be open to making sure that board membership, if established, was highly scrutinized?
Yep. I'd be certainly willing to talk about that and entertain that. I do think having somebody from one of the investor-owned utilities, if not both of them, on the board is very important because they have the expertise and experience in building transmission lines. This gets into very complicated issues on how our transmission lines intersect with ISO New England and intersect with FERC. So they're not easy issues to talk about or figure out. So I think they're going to be, rather than political appointments, more of expertise appointments. Thank you.
Representative Geiger.
Thank you, Senator Lawrence, for being here and introducing this bill. At the risk of this being a stupid question, I'm thinking about previous discussions we've had in this committee, and particularly I'm thinking of Representative Runte's frustration with all the different parties that intersect or try to intersect or don't intersect when trying to move any kind of project forward. And I'd just love you to talk me through how you see the PUC and the new Department of Energy, which has just been created, intersecting with now another new authority. And is there a reason that this kind of authority couldn't have been imbued into the Department of Energy?
So I'm not sure. I'd have to think about what bonding capacity and what authority that the Department of Energy has to bond. I don't think they have any bonding capacity. We did give them recently procurement capacity, and that raises a whole nother level. I'm not opposed to thinking about putting it someplace else. My thought is, and I originally talked a little bit to Michael Stoddard about this, about putting it in Efficiency Main Trust. It would be a big project for anybody to undertake, but my belief is that to get respect of bond houses, you probably will need an independent authority, similar to FAME is semi-independent. Maine State Housing is semi-independent. So you're going to need some independence there to get the bonding capacity.
Other questions from the committee? Representative Kessler.
Thank you. So the other piece of this that's in the language around generation, I feel is equally important. And I'm curious to understand why you do not want to include generation in this potential authority when we'll potentially save billions of dollars by having that option.
I see them as two distinct issues, and we made a decision decades ago to separate generation and to separate transmission and distribution. And the belief was that if we privatize generation, that we would get a lower price for ratepayers. I'm not really, ready to go back and revisit that, or if we have a financing authority for generation. The need I see right now is transmission. There's no shortage of generation out there. There's tons of generation around. But for the state of Maine, we are at the end of the pipeline, and our transmission system, personally, I don't think is great enough to sustain the growth we're going to need if we're going to grow our economy in Maine. So that's why I made it focused on transmission. I also put in there storage, because I think storage is another issue we have to find a way to finance, and finance inexpensively. We went with a lot of grid scale solar, and especially on Versant, it's putting a lot of pressure on Versant. And storage would alleviate a lot of that pressure. But as a government, we need to find ways to stimulate that. We need to find a way to make it affordable, storage affordable in the long run.
Any follow?
I'm not objecting to generation. It's just not something I'm excited about. Public funding.
Representative Foster, you had a follow-up question?
Another question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Lawrence, one of the testimonies brought this up, and again, referring to the language that was before us. A concern is that municipalities, and for instance, a small town of Parkman, when the wind farm was put in over at Bingham Way, that line passed through their town into Guilford, where a substation was rebuilt to accept the power that eventually was going out of state. And one of the caveats for the town, they had to vote on it, was that they would allow that line to go through, but they got property tax out of it. It was mentioned here that this authority would not be subject to property tax if they were to actually own the lines. Can you address that?
So I'm fine with them being subject to property tax if they own the line. I'm fine with that. Ultimately, if ownership of the line is subject to property taxes, it's the ratepayers who pay the property tax. That's the reality. And so the purpose of this bill, and kind of why I stuck that in there, is to try to get transmission built that we have to get built, and we have a lot to build, as inexpensively on the ratepayers as possible. So that'd be a trade-off. If we felt property taxes needed to be paid and the ratepayers could bear it, that could be fine. You also could propose it coming out of the general fund. Who knows? All options are open. I just want to, put this bomb in front of you and then retire and allow you guys to figure out if we can save Maine ratepayers money by doing this.
You have a follow-up to that, Representative Foster?
He's also retiring, so he has plenty of follow-ups.
Yes, thank you. So with that statement that you just made, does that mean that I also don't have to be here when this passes?
I think you and I will be sitting on a porch in North Berwick at your son's house and talking about what they're doing up here. So yeah, it's possible this could go out as a study. It's possible all different kinds of things. But I did not want to leave the legislature without us exploring this as an option.
Thank you. I'd like, while you percolate on that, Representative McIntyre, about the visual he just gave us about porch sitting. What was my question to you, Senator Lawrence, is what was the result of the conversation around with Efficiency Maine? Because they do have the option, for example, for financing low-cost loans for storage, et cetera.
Yep. When I talked with Michael, and this was very early on, and I've talked with him a couple of times, Michael Stoddard. I mean, I would say it was reluctance to commit because it would be such a big undertaking and such a change of their focus. And the question was whether it should be done by somebody separate who was solely focused on this issue.
Any last questions for the good senator?
So I hope I've made the rest of your session fun.
Thank you, Senator Lawrence. We will be moving on.
Thank you.
I will note, normally we would ask for co-sponsors. Our good colleague, Representative Rente couldn't be with us, but I just direct you to his testimony with suggested amendments to the language that was presented at the public hearing for your perusal. All right. Any other co-sponsors wish to testify on this bill? Seeing that, we will move to those who are proponents. First, we will invite up Jack Shapiro. After that will be Jason Chadwick and then Sarah Woodbury. So first, we will welcome up Mr. Shapiro. Welcome.
Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, members of the committee. My name is Jack Shapiro. I'm the Climate and Clean Energy Director at the Natural Resources Council of Maine. And the testimony before you is in support of the sponsors amendment. And I appreciate the sponsor bringing forward this bill to start this conversation. And while we've been told to ignore the language, I think it does bring up a number of important issues which are touched on in the written testimony for the committee to consider as they look at these issues. I think generally speaking, NRCM is in support of exploring this concept, and especially the use of revenue bonds to reduce the costs of building the energy infrastructure we need. As we have talked about in this committee before, the fundamental advantage of clean energy is that there are no daily, weekly, monthly fuel costs associated with power production. But the flip side is that most of the costs of building those resources come up front, which makes lower cost financing very, very important, and makes this a really big opportunity for Maine ratepayers. Some of the things that we talk about in the written testimony here, again, are specific to the amendment, but I think will be important wherever this goes. One is clarifying the duties of the authority related to transmission as it pertains to the new department's responsibilities. They're doing a transmission infrastructure study right now that's due back to this committee in September. And of course, ISO New England also does a bunch of transmission planning as well for Maine and for Maine in the regional context. So clarifying the roles and responsibilities relative to those entities will be important to avoid confusion amongst stakeholders and the public. For the solicitations that are outlined in the amendment, also relative to the DOER, where the project selection criteria were made explicit, that may be something that the committee may wish to consider, as well as the sequencing. If low-cost financing is available to projects before the solicitations are made by DOER, that lower-cost financing could be incorporated into bids, potentially making them more competitive, lower cost to the ratepayer. For project selection, the process by which the authority will identify projected needs, whether that's limited to transmission or the broader set of storage, grid enhancing technologies, NWAs that are outlined in the amendment, that's going to be important. There's already public planning processes like the integrated grid plans, the DOER's comprehensive energy plan, the NWA process. There's a number of places where identifying projects sort of already happens. And so considering that will be important, as well as thinking about where public bonding could have the most advantage. Some projects, transmission projects, if they're selected by the ISO, already are assigned to the regional tariff and are very secure and have low cost financing. So where can this make the most marginal difference? Am I about to run out of time?
You have, and so if you'd like to just wrap up and reference your last two points.
Sure. I think the one thing in there also for the committee to consider is references utility ownership of storage. I think there's a big distinction between ownership of storage and operation of storage that has cost implications. And then I think finally, there are some cases where leaving the door open to some aspect of a public ownership stake might actually be strategic for the state to bring in benefits long-term as Maine becomes a producer of energy and not just a consumer. So thanks to the committee. Happy to answer any questions folks have.
Thank you. Any questions at this time for Mr. Shapiro? Seeing none, thank you. Given us a lot to think about. I'd like to invite up Jackson Chadwick, and then will be Sarah Woodbury. Welcome, Mr. Chadwick.
Good afternoon, Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and members of the EUT committee. Good afternoon. My name is Jackson Chadwick. I represent Maine Youth for Climate Justice as their advocacy and organizing director. We work to empower youth under 30 to champion climate action and justice through legislative advocacy, community organizing, and educational initiatives. And our members include high school and college students, as well as young adults who are entering and supporting our state's workforce. I am testifying today in support of LD 838, though I'm going to slightly revise my remarks and focus on a particular section of the bill that our organization's members found interesting. And I just want to start by saying that young Mainers care about the future of our electric transmission infrastructure. Many young Mainers working in the trades are a part of apprenticeship programs, which often offer a more accessible and affordable pathway to developing their skills and entering the workforce. As it is currently written in LD 838, it includes a labor standards provision into the authority's work, including language that ensures young apprentices are employed in the construction of such transmission systems and are paid the prevailing wage. So we believe if Maine is to retain and attract more young people in our state, we must create pathways that allow them to live, work, and prosper here. And we see this legislation as one potential pathway to do just that. I also wanted to note that there is some national precedent for establishing such an authority in the state. Some rural states with populations similar to ours, including Idaho, Nebraska, New Mexico, and North Dakota, all have some kind of similar statewide energy authority tasked with financing transmission infrastructure. So I just want to conclude by saying, the young Mainers that MRCJ represents will lose out on opportunities to find long-lasting, good-paying jobs in the tough job market we are in, and that we should be doing all we can to help people of our generation succeed. And so we see LD 838 as a potential avenue to do that. And thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwick. Any questions at this time? Representative Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Chadwick, for your testimony. I don't see in here that you've indicated where you are from.
Where I reside?
Yes.
From
Bangor.
Yep.
So you're not too far from where I am in Dexter. I'm wondering, have you also heard from youth that are concerned about growing up and eventually living in our neck of the woods with the concern that they have with the increasing acreage of solar farms and the wind towers that are going up on places where some of them, my kids, for instance, we used to take hiking and things when they were young. I'm wondering if there's any concern raised for your organization from those young people.
I have not heard many of our organization's members raise that concern, though I do know it is a concern amongst some people. I don't think this is much related to the bill, but I think community solar, for instance, can be done responsibly, and I've always believed in that. But I didn't have any members of our organization convey those concerns to me before this hearing.
All set, Mr. Representative. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Mr. Chadwick. We appreciate you. Next up will be Sarah Woodbury. After that is Seth Berry, and then we have someone online who I believe is also in favor of the bill.
Good afternoon, Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and other distinguished members of the EUT committee. My name is Sarah Woodbury, and I'm the Legislative Director for Maine Conservation Voters. MCV is a statewide nonprofit organization with 13,000 members and supporters, building a just, thriving future for all by acting on the climate crisis, protecting the environment, and safeguarding our democracy. My testimony here is specific to the amendment that is now moot. So I will just say, I'm not going to read my whole testimony because you've heard a lot of this, but just in general, MCV is a big fan of finding ways to lower electricity bills for Mainers. And we think that providing them low cost bonds to build on transmission would, is a good way to go about this. We would just point out that this is a long-term solution. This is not something that is a quick fix that is necessarily ratepayers are going to immediately see a deduction in their rates along their bills. But what it can do is help lower cost increases in the future, keeping rates down for Maine ratepayers. Isn't necessarily a quick fix or flashy, but it's a common sense program that will help ratepayers down the line. And so just in general, we are supportive of low interest bonds to move forward with this stuff. And that's all I'll say. And maybe when we get newer language, we can update our testimony. So.
Thank you. Ms. Woodbury, any questions at this time? Seeing none, we thank you very much for your time and attention this afternoon. I'd like to call up Seth Berry. And then after that, we'll bring in Jason Angel from Zoom. Hi.
Thank
Good
you
afternoon, Mr. Berry.
very much. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, committee members. My name is Seth Berry. I reside in Bodenham, and I'm Executive Director of Our Power. We're here to testify in strong support of the concept behind LD 838 and some general observations based on its current shape as we understood it. The sponsor's amendment to LD 838 really offers hope to Maine and the Northeast in our view, and for that reason we support it. We do think it needs some fine tuning, and the sponsors spoken to that. So I'll make a few suggestions today. Just quickly, Our Power is a small nonprofit. We advocate, based in Maine, we advocate for affordable, reliable, locally controlled power. It's been around since 2020. And we do believe that more public energy investment generally is needed urgently and needed now. And we would include fossil and other types of sort of non-clean infrastructure in that statement. Public investment is helpful to bring down costs regardless. Obviously, between electrification and data centers, New England demand will continue to increase. Current projections from ISO indicate that we'll see very, very significant growth, something like 21,000 gigawatt hours over the next decade. And I think that was done before the data center boom really kicked in. So you're in a position to make some really important decisions, and affordability is going to be key. We have a few quick observations, and I have two items that I've submitted online as testimony, so you can refer to those there. Our recommendations for the bill are, number one, in whatever you do, consult with bond counsel. The state treasurer's office has consulted with this committee before. And I'm sure would be happy to do so again and to make their bond counsel available to you. So if you're considering public investment, please do talk to a lawyer that is, very familiar and specialized in that area. The state treasurer in the past has been very responsive. I'm sure the current treasurer would be as well. Certainly, any new authority will require some initial funding. So some way to provide that initial funding for staffing and expertise will be critical. We would encourage a change in scope if there is clearly a preference for keeping transmission private. That's fine. We would encourage the consideration of storage and generation in a more public ownership approach to be preferable to bring down costs. And it could be a public-private partnership. There are lots of ways to do that, lease agreements, concessions, et cetera. But public ownership is going to bring down the cost significantly. And a great example, which we provide an extensive documentation on for you in our online testimony is the New York Power Authority. NYPA is a really interesting local, northeastern example of public financing to bring down cost. And it has a long track record, so you can really understand what they're doing, particularly in the generation and transmission space. We provide some examples in our testimony of transmission projects that they're currently involved in, public-private partnerships, where NYPA is taking essentially a capital position to allow that lower cost capital to be accessed, but the private sector is doing much of the work.
Mr.
So
Barry, you are at your 3 minutes.
I'll conclude simply by saying we're happy to be involved in any potential amendments. We congratulate the sponsor on bringing this idea forward and greatly appreciate it. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Representative McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious, because you used the air quotes during your verbal testimony.
Right.
Could you further describe what you would put as the boundaries of the referenced fossil fuels that you said you would be open to?
I would not, thank you for the question, Representative McIntyre. And generally speaking, our members prefer energy independence and generally speaking, resources that are here, that can be accessed here without being dependent on volatile, sometimes expensive fuels are preferred. However, I think the committee could take affordability as wisely as the highest priority and could be neutral with respect to what kinds of resources are invested in by a proposed authority. I don't know if that answered, did that help? In other words, we're agnostic on the type of fuel or the type of generation, but we do think that we would have a preference for homegrown fuels, which tend to be things like wind, solar, perhaps biomass, perhaps hydro, and less fossil fuel. But that's really a policy choice for you all.
Additional questions at this time for Mr. Barry? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you
so
very much.
We do have 2 folks online who are ready to testify in support of LD 838. The first one we will invite in is Jason Engel. Forgive me. Welcome.
okay.
Please introduce yourself. Go right ahead. You have 3
You got it
minutes.
right the
You're
first
welcome.
time. Jason Angel. Hi, thank you very much. So members of the committee, Jason Angel, nice to meet you. And I was submitting testimony in support of the draft LD 838. Let me just make a point. Hearing Senator Lawrence's comments at the start of this hearing, I would just like to say that a focus on public financing for transmission lines is a very important thing to bring down the cost to ratepayers. I'm going to be speaking from my perspective as a solar developer and how projects get built. And at the same time, I'd respectfully, given that this is a fluid beginning process, that the committee does consider using public financing for generation as well, because it also can have a deep impact on affecting ratepayers. I am representing Municipal Solar Partners. We are a nonprofit solar development firm that partners with municipalities and tribes to build municipally or tribally owned renewable and energy storage projects. We collaborate in Maine with the Maine Labor Climate Council, and we're currently supporting the Mi'kmaq Nation in a project to build solar and energy storage at their farm and fish hatchery in Presque Isle. And so just quickly, our team has over 15 years experience building 500 megawatts of solar. And we have seen that building publicly, municipally owned or tribally owned solar can double the benefits to residents and ratepayers. So I'm talking about generation projects that produce electricity bill savings, that produce new sources of non-tax public revenue from responsible community solar programs, and that produce good union jobs. And so I think that considering establishing a Maine Clean Energy Authority to both use public financing to build out transmission lines is a very smart and important thing, but also to consider how it can lower the cost of creating power generation as well. I will say that there are two important things when we're thinking about how a Maine Clean Energy Authority could help ratepayers. One, on the transmission side, as a developer, one of the first things that kills a clean energy project is the cost of interconnecting the project to the grid and the cost of transmission lines. So this idea can help with that. But at the same time, one of the most major costs in building a publicly owned or municipally owned system is the cost of public financing. And so while we work in Maine, we also work nationally. We've worked with NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. We worked in NYPA, and I see my 3 minutes are up, which go quickly. So I'll make the point that working with a public financing agency that can lower base points on a lower cost loan to a project, whether it's transmission line or generation, is that margin which can produce a project which is going to save ratepayers, offer lower electricity bills, or produce revenues. So
Thank you,
we are
Mr. Angel. I'm going to stop you there. Thank you. If there's any questions, I'll certainly turn to the committee to ask if you have any. Did you have one last thing that you needed to wrap up?
No, I did not. No, you ended it. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much
There we go.
for your time.
And I see no questions. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Angel.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome in on Zoom Peter Fitzgerald. After that, that will conclude those speaking in favor of the bill, unless I hear otherwise. Okay, so Mr. Fitzgerald is coming in. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Fitzgerald. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I am Peter Fitzgerald. I'm a resident of the town of Bucksport, and I am also here on behalf of Alt Engineering LLC. Another one of the things that is an important part of the funding of projects for transmission is how the decisions are made for what transmission projects get built. The investor-owned utilities make their profits off of increasing the build out of the system. And so they have an incentive to build as much as they can. And we have not seen the very much success in the non-wires alternative programs, despite investor-owned utilities also saying that they are doing non-wires alternative investigations internally. The integrated grid planning that is going on right now is very good for getting more information out. And it's not showing that utilities are changing their planning methods going into the future. They are continuing to do the same thing. And yeah, so I mean they've also admit that they have mixed responsibilities. They're responsible for providing public service, and they're also responsible to their stakeholders. So having an entity that is focused entirely on public service would be a very big help for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Any questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, we thank you for being with us this afternoon, sir. Nice to see you again.
Thanks.
Okay, we will then turn to those who are opposed to LD 838. I'm going to use chair's prerogative and ask Tanya Blanchard to come up first. I understand you had some time constraints. Then we will go to Kelly Flagg. Welcome, Ms. Blanchard.
Thank you. For you. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utility, and Technology, thank you for the opportunity to testify in opposition to LD 838. My name is Tanya Blanchard, and I am presenting testimony on behalf of Preserve Rural Maine. LD 838 grants phenomenal cosmic power with itty-bitty accountability. This is the bill that we saw online. It's the only bill that I can submit testimony for until we see something otherwise. That's what I'm speaking on. This bill creates a powerful unelected authority that is not subject to direction by any department or agency. This authority is granted expansive powers over planning, financing, rulemaking, staffing, and property acquisition with limited legislative or public oversight. This concentration of authority is deeply concerning. Most troubling is the bill's treatment of eminent domain. LD 838 grants the authority condemnation powers while explicitly carving out longstanding protections in Maine law, including requirements for public necessity findings and other safeguards enacted through bipartisan consensus. Some of these safeguards are in place because this committee unanimously supported them not even 2 years ago, and they've been carved out of this bill. This bill grants the authority the power to acquire, hold, and dispose of personal and real property whenever the authority determines that property is necessary or desirable. This goes too far. Eminent domain is not just a legal process, it's a deeply personal one. When the state takes someone's land or home, it doesn't just take property, it takes security, history, and often a family's sense of place. For rural Mainers especially, land is not an asset on a spreadsheet. It's a lifetime of work, inheritance, identity, and community. These impacts must never be minimized, and they must never be authorized without the strongest possible protections. In addition, exempting property taken by the authority from taxes will cause harm to rural municipalities by eroding their tax base, forcing a higher tax burden onto remaining residents. The composition of the proposed boards further compounds these concerns. The board is dominated by entities already involved in transmission development, while excluding landowners, small municipalities, local businesses, and experts in forestry, agriculture, tourism, and public finance. Board members serve extensive terms and can only be removed for gross misconduct. Without enforceable conflict of interest and recusal requirements, the public can reasonably perceive this authority as serving insiders rather than communities. LD 838 asks Maine people to trust that a powerful, insulated authority will act wisely and fairly, even when citizens most affected have the least voice. This is not how good energy policy or good government should be made. For this bill to be considered supportable, there are substantial amendments that are outlined in my written testimony. Absent these changes, I strongly urge the committee to vote ought not to pass on the drafted bill, LD 838. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blanchard. Any questions at this time from the committee? Ms. Blanchard. Representative Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Blanchard, for being here today. So knowing that this draft is the only thing we have to go by, I think your testimony may help as far as pointing out some of the issues that may need to be worked on going forward. I'm wondering if you could, if this were in place as is written, how you think the LS power line might have fared.
If this were in place as written, not a lawyer, reading through it, it looks to me as though it would be very possible for this authority to take, using eminent domain or anything otherwise, properties to give it to LS Power. And it did seem as though that was one of the biggest problems that LS Power came up against, was their surprise that people actually enjoy the land that they're living on. It was very difficult for them to find a route that they could needle in between properties, and the outcry of opposition. I don't think that they expected that. I know that's one very small piece of how LS Power's transmission line bid failed. I think that their bid was put together
we don't know for sure because it's not transparent. They seem to be leaving an awful lot out. They seem to be missing a lot of points along the way. They had never done business in Maine before. We're a unique state. I'm not sure that this authority would have helped that project in that it might have given them kind of carte blanche to here, go ahead and build it. And maybe it wasn't the best way that it could have been built.
Additional questions for Ms. Blanchard at this time, Representative Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for coming today. And I'll keep it quick because I know you have kiddos to get back to. My question for you is either you personally or conversations you've had with Preserve Rural Maine, what was your understanding, again, if this bill were to put into place today without any edits, what that relationship between existing moratoriums or anything local regulation wise, based on some of the towns you represent, what would that look like, you think?
On reading this draft, it does look like it would take away that home rule authority from municipalities, that the ordinances that they've drafted, even as far as saying, you know, if a municipality says this is a growth district, this is where we want to allow growth, this is a farmland district, this is where we want to keep it very rural. This drafted language looks like it would ignore that will.
Additional questions for Ms. Blanchard? Seeing none, we thank you for your time and
thank you very much.
Testimony this afternoon. I'd like to invite up Kelly Flagg. After that will be Ashley Lusky and then Kathleen Bowman.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and the members of the committee. My name is Kelly Flagg. I'm the Executive Director of the Associated General Contractors of Maine. Our organization represents 250 contractors and construction firms representing about 30,000 workers in Maine who actually build our state's infrastructure. And I will start by saying we absolutely support reliable Maine-based energy and lowering the cost to build transmission. And I have provided some review to the existing language in my testimony, which is considerably longer than the comments I will have time to make right now. The big picture, we are going to urge you to reject LD 838 as currently presented, or at minimum, hold it for more significant discussion. It does a lot more than the sponsor has indicated the intention was. What I heard was the intention was to lower the cost and provide alternative financing for transmission, and that it was not meant to replace developers or manage construction. However, what it does do as written is creates a powerful quasi-government authority outside of our normal state structure and allows unlimited public borrowing with no guardrails. It does, in fact, grant eminent domain to a brand new board. It does also lock in union-only labor structures that shut out most of Maine's workforce that currently plays in the energy construction sector. So essentially, it is a huge expansion of power in a rushed second session bill. It blows up some of the things you just did, right? In 2023, the legislature created the Department of Energy Resources to centralize energy planning and procurement. This now creates a secondary authority that's not a state agency. It's not subject to executive control and can plan corridors, pick developers, and finance projects. So it's a duplication of some of the authority that hasn't even begun to take place yet. So it just undermines that brand new department. It also has the option to put Maine in unlimited debt with no breaks. There's no bond cap. There's no required legislative approval. There's no mandatory ratepayer impact review. And unlike the Turnpike Authority, this entity has no guaranteed revenue stream. Maine Turnpike Authority has tolls to rely on. There's no guaranteed revenue stream here. It's just very risky. Now, here are some other things. It does, in fact, provide eminent domain. We were just told that it wasn't intended to, so maybe that's a potential future amendment. But it does give this authority eminent domain power. It also explicitly states that we would have to use prevailing wage. We already do that on publicly funded projects, so that's not an issue. It has apprenticeship quotas. Our members are used to handling those things, but it also mandates project labor agreements and project harmony agreements. Only 10% of our state's workforce currently belongs under union representation. So you're eliminating 90% of our current workforce. And I know we talk about wanting to take care of our future workforce and develop and pay our future workers. We do that. The 90% of construction workers already do that.
Ms. Flagg, you reached your. 3
I
minutes.
understand I've reached my limit, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, and thank you for your extensive written
Yeah.
testimony as well. Any questions, Representative McIntyre?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you have any additional thoughts you'd care to offer to us?
Thank you very much for that lovely question. I will keep them brief. There is a couple. I just want to state that the project labor agreements and project harmony agreements are going to be harmful. It was just asked by Representative Foster how this would have impacted bids on potentially existing discussion that we're having. Anytime you include a project labor agreement or a project harmony agreement, it's going to eliminate your largest developers of these projects in the state of Maine. They have stood in other committees and potentially in this committee and flat out refused to bid on projects that had those requirements, not because they don't want to pay the wages, but because they don't want to become union organizations. Many of them are employee owned. And so it doesn't make sense in that environment. In addition, we already pay prevailing wage, and that creates higher costs, not lower costs, right? So there's a number of things about this language that are above and beyond the intended statement about what this language was meant to do. So I think there's just a lot of work to be done here in a very, very short period of time in order for this to be effective in the way that it was intended.
Additional questions, Representative Webb?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are you saying that if there's a project labor agreement, a non-union construction firm cannot bid on that job?
That's not what I'm saying. They can bid on the job, but they would likely be subject to a collective bargaining agreement, which they will not sign. So I think you probably will hear testimony after mine from some of those companies stating their position on that. But they've chosen business models that take care of their employees through significant wages and benefits. Generally, if you put them side by side, they're the same. If we're talking about a prevailing wage project, they have to be the same because those wages and rates and benefits are dictated by the prevailing wage structure already. And so in some cases, it's even duplicative. If you're an open shop, employee-owned organization, you can't suspend that company structure while you are part of a collective bargaining agreement. So in essence, they're then paying benefits into a union collective bargaining agreement, into those retirement benefits that those employees will never see. So it actually doesn't strengthen the employee position in any way. Actually forces the company to double pay benefits.
Do you have a follow-up? Additional questions, Representative Geiger?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here today. So I've heard
Thank you.
the argument many times because I sit on the Labor
Yes.
Committee. And as far as I can see, most of those companies work out of state and all of them do PLAs everywhere else. It's simply a refusal to do them in Maine if they can prevent it. And it appears to be ideological rather than because they use it all the time in other states. Do you want to
I would
speak to that?
say I will let those companies speak on their own behalf, but I think it is an overstatement of the truth to say they use it all the time in other states. Maybe in specific cases that I'm unaware of, maybe, but I can say that those companies here in Maine are not interested in this type of agreement.
Thank you. Additional questions for Ms. Flagg at this time, Representative Kelsey?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I just wanted to ask a question about the comment about uncertain repayments. And so the overall concept of this is sort of build it and they will come. What is making you say that this is so uncertain that it's a significant risk?
Well, so if you compare it to another authority, for instance, the Turnpike, right? We know that there's a revenue stream there to repay debt. And that's often a discussion. I mean, we work in those realms as well, right? Our members work with the DOT and the Turnpike Authority as well. So in that case, there is a guaranteed revenue stream and a guaranteed way to repay those bonds. So that's really where that statement comes from. There is no guarantee of where that repayment funding will come from without us putting it somewhere. Right?
Follow? Okay. Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we will move on to Ashley Lusky, then Kathleen Bowman, and then Mr. James Cody. And if you are standing in this room, we would ask respectfully that you sit down because of our fire code. Please find plenty of seats. Don't be shy. There's a few up front. Love that. Welcome, Ms. Lusky.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. My name is Ashley Lusky, and I'm here on behalf of the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, the state's largest business association, providing testimony in opposition to LD 838. We certainly support more generation, stronger transmission and distribution system, and recognize Senator Lawrence's intent to reduce costs as much as possible. I would just say, there really is no shortage of interest in developing generation, as we've heard today, transmission and distribution infrastructure in the state. Our members are actively investing, proposing projects, and participating in regional planning processes through ISO New England, the Public Utilities Commission, and soon DOER. Creating a new authority to plan, finance, and direct projects suggests that this work may not already be being done, when in fact it very clearly is. We do believe that this bill, again, speaking to the amendment, LD 838 that was sent out, is a bit duplicative and raises more questions than answers, feeling that even more so now. It establishes a new entity with significant decision-making authority, and yet its responsibilities overlap with those of existing agencies, and provides little clarity as to when project decisions would lie with the authority versus the PUC and new Department of Energy Resources. The bill also introduces significant procurement and financing concerns for the chamber. The authority would conduct competitive solicitations, finance projects through an open-ended bonding authority, and prohibit utilities from owning projects it develops. While the bill suggests public financing could lower costs, it would expose ratepayers to long-term debt obligations without clear guardrails, as you heard from Ms. Flagg just now. And these decisions really would be based outside of the typical process we see right now, which is based on system need and cost effectiveness. I would just say we do have concerns also around the project labor agreements for larger projects, which this bill identifies, if I recall, as $5 million or more, which I think is a pretty low standard for energy projects typically. And just have real concerns that it would limit the pool of eligible contractors and that impact that it would have on Maine-based employers and employees. So look forward to seeing more language on this and providing input at that time, but those are just our initial thoughts. Happy to take any questions and appreciate your time as always.
Thank you, Ms. Lusky. Any questions at this time from the committee? Seeing none, we thank you for your time and testimony this afternoon. I'd like to invite up Kathleen Bowman. After that will be James Cody. If there are other folks who wish to testify in opposition, that is my complete list. So that if not, we will move on after Mr. Cody to neither for nor against. Welcome, Ms. Bowman.
Afternoon, Representative Sachs, Senator Lawrence, members of the Utilities Committee. I'm Kathleen Bowman from Central Maine Power Company. I don't know what I'm going to say. This is, I'm not going to go through my testimony. You can read it at your leisure, and most of the points have already been made, but I do want to thank Senator Lawrence for his willingness to talk with us about this legislation prior to the language coming out. We just sort of had a free-flowing conversation about what he was looking to do, and the way he was describing what he was hoping to do. I said, that kind of sounds like NYPA or NYSERDA and the things that they do in New York. And he said, yeah, tell me more. So I'm not going to give you a primer on what those two organizations do, but the deputy CEO of Avangrid, Kim Harriman, worked for NYPA. She was the senior vice president of public and regulatory affairs for NYPA for many years. And she is also on the board of NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research Development Authority, which seems to be more focused on funding, financing for residential and small business, building upgrades, that sort of thing. Interestingly, one of the programs that they offer loans for has a loan rate that is not much lower than ours. Their 9.325 is there with the rate that they were offering for assistance, and our allowable rate of return is 9.35. So it was interesting to see that it's very similar. We did talk a little bit about that again is NYSERDA. NYPA, I think, is going to be quite different, the power authority, and what they could do with the full faith and credit of the state and bonding capacity. So what I wanted to offer is that we are happy to have a briefing for the committee. Kim could come in, she could bring in some folks from NYSERDA or NYPA to let you ask questions about how the thing works. And if that's the model that you're looking forward to, we'd be happy to organize that. That's it. I don't have any other points until we get into the meat of this. And we're obviously very, very interested in participating in any group conversations you have on the next iteration.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Questions at this time? Representative Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. and Thank you, Mr. Bowman, for being here. So you may not be able to answer this now, but how are those entities that you just named in New York State, how are they funded?
Bonds.
How is the structure, if you will, the folks that are in that would be in, if we did something like that in Maine, how are they funded?
You mean the employees of the
employees,
organization? I don't know.
The board?
I don't know, but we'll find out. I don't know.
Would you agree that they may have a few more ratepayers to help
Oh,
with
indeed.
the bill than Maine does?
They have quite a lot more, yes. And I think they have a lot of employees, and, the magnitude that we're talking about is not small. A Maine, I don't know what Maine's bonding capacity is currently. You probably know, Representative Sachs. But we're talking about billion-dollar transmission projects. I think that's part of the discussion going forward. How do we pay for that?
Additional questions for Ms. Bowman, Representative Webb.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I would be interested, even if only by email, to get more information on what New York does and some specifics on that. That does seem very interesting.
Great. I mean, I think it'd be valuable for you to be able to ask questions of those people, but happy to help organize that if I can.
I think the request at this point was if you could send links or email, that would be great. And then, of course, the committee would invite folks in if they had time and appetite. Additional questions for Ms. Bowman? Seeing none, we thank you for your time and testimony. Thank you. I'd like to invite up James Cody. This will end those testifying in opposition, and then we will move on to neither for nor against. We will invite up next Eliza Donahue, just so you're aware of who's on deck. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Cody.
Thank you, and I apologize for a late sign up. I thought somebody had signed me up earlier. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and members of the committee, my name is James Cody. I'm here today on behalf of Versant Power in opposition to the bill as printed, and you'll see our testimony should reflect that. I just wanted to say a few things to echo what you just heard from Ms. Bowman and from some others. First of all, Senator Lawrence, we heard you loud and clear that you're open for a discussion and to gather some new information, and we would be delighted to participate in that discussion. The second thing that I wanted to mention is that in terms of looking at sort of the cost benefit analysis of a proposal like this, I think one thing that is important to keep in mind is that it is often not just Mainers and Maine ratepayers that benefit from these transmission projects and upgrades. And so anything we do, we should also be looking at this in the lens of how we pay for the commensurate benefits that we get as Mainers, but also how others in other neighboring states benefit from their fair share of these projects as well. So just think that that's important. And lastly, I'll just mention, since it was brought up earlier, that obviously you've heard from Versant Power and others about utility ownership of energy storage in the past and how we think that there may be some benefits that could flow to ratepayers based on that, and there's been lots of discussion about that. I only mention that as an issue. If it should survive into whatever the next iteration is, we would love to have that conversation and continue to share with the committee some of the language that we've put together that would directly benefit ratepayers and customers as an ancillary benefit to this. So with that, obviously, we are very grateful to Senator Lawrence for inviting us to the conversation, and we'd be happy to participate.
Thank you. And you still had a few minutes ago.
No, you guys hear from me
All right.
enough.
Any questions at this time for Mr. Cody? And we thank you for that consideration, Mr. Cody. Okay, so we will move on now to the neither those for or against, and we will invite up Eliza Donahue. After that will be Carolyn Colin and then Sylvia Modest. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, members of the committee. My name is Eliza Donahue. I represent the Maine Renewable Energy Association. Thanks for the opportunity to share testimony neither for nor against the bill. As others who have come before me have said, there are elements of this that we are very enthusiastic about, and some others that we have some questions. And again, as others have said, our written testimony is in response to that earlier draft, but I do think there are some threads in there that will be useful as you guys continue to evolve the bill. So to put a finer point on it, but I won't go through everything, we are very much supportive of the pursuit of revenue bonds, whether they be solely for transmission, for generation. However, we do have many questions about the new authority, its proposed procurement authority, et cetera. And then also, I can't help but say thank you to Senator Lawrence for talking about Maine as an energy exporter. We wholeheartedly agree. So let's see. One thing I would ask that the committee be mindful of as they continue on is thinking about how this bonding authority would be used in the context of regional procurements. As you all are well aware, that has been an initiative of this committee of the administration and has real cost-saving opportunities. I'm no expert of bonding authority, but I can't help but have some questions on how that would work in practice, particularly when we're talking about projects. And I think Jack Shapiro mentioned this in his testimony when we're talking about funding reliability projects, not these new transmission lines, but these projects that are funded by ISO, et cetera. We also offer caution, if not opposition, to attaching organized labor agreements to projects financed by revenue bonds. Ms. Flagg, I think, said it quite plainly. I appreciated Representative Foster's questions to that point. Just our inherent concern that when you limit the pool of potential people to work on a project, that could have some cost, that could come with some downfalls. Finally, I will say that MREA, and again, it's unclear how this will relate to the bill, but MREA opposes utility ownership of energy storage. You know, storage is going to play a really important role in our clean energy transition. Also has some very important benefits for costs of transmission. However, we don't, again, believe that utilities should be able to build, own, or operate the projects because we think that that is a role that the private sector is very much wanting to play. And when both are playing in the sandbox, that could tamp down competition and as such raise costs.
Thank
you,
Ms.
leave it
Donahue.
at that, and happy to continue to be part of the conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Donahue. Questions at this time for Ms. Donahue? Seeing none, we thank you for your time and testimony. I'd like to invite up Carolyn Colin from the department. After that will be Sylvia Most and then Deirdre Schneider. I would be absolutely fine with that. Sorry, I was not aware of any time constraints, Ms. Most. Please come on up.
Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, distinguished members of the committee. My name is Sylvia Most, Legislative Liaison for the OPA, here to testify neither for nor against. We thank Senator Lawrence for bringing forward this important proposal, and we are generally supportive of exploring outside the box. Ideas for how to leverage public financing to make future energy-related investments more affordable for ratepayers. And we see this legislation as a way to begin the conversation. Having just received the proposal a few days ago, fortunately, we have not conducted a line-by-line analysis of it, but we want to further understand what types of activities the Maine Energy Authority would be taking over from other agencies such as the PUC and the Department of Energy Resources, if any, at this point, and what activities would be a new and novel role for this new public entity in Maine. We believe that it'd be important to identify what problems this authority is truly being established to solve, and then to carefully refine the legislation to create an authority that can tackle these problems. We've identified a few threshold questions that cause initial concern with the draft, including identification of a source of funds for the startup budget for the authority. And we also notice a lack of conflict of interest provisions with regard to the board and the executive director and who might be proposing some of these projects. All of these concerns may or well be easily surmountable, but we can see that there'll be significant work. We're ready, willing to participate in that effort, and I can answer any questions or bring them to a work session.
Thank you, Ms. Most. Any questions? We thank you for your optimism for that this may be feasible, easily surmountable. Representative, go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sylvia, is this your first testimony that you've written for the committee?
This may be the first one where it's me instead of Heather that was supposed to.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wadsworth. Any other questions at this time from Ms. Most? Seeing none, we thank you for your time and testimony. All right. I'd like to invite up Carolyn Colin from the department.
Good afternoon, Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and members of the committee. My name is Caroline Cullen, Legislative Liaison for the Department of Energy Resources. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on LD 838 as amended. Department appreciates the sponsor's commitment to lowering energy costs, improving reliability, and accelerating the clean energy transition. This proposal is significant and complex and intersects with many existing state and regional processes. Having only received this language recently, my comments are preliminary, and obviously there's a lot of broad discussion here today. But I want to focus on three areas where I think significant narrowing of this bill would help implement maybe some of its goals. Those areas are project scope, financing authority, and public-private roles. First, we believe the authority scope is much too broad. It authorizes the authority to develop, plan, finance, and build a wide range of infrastructure projects, including transmission, storage, non-Mars alternatives, generation, geothermal, and beneficial electrification. Such breadth would require substantial administrative, financial, and staffing capacity. For example, NYSERDA, I think, has about 500 employees. I think NYPA has more than 1,000. So they're very large organizations. And it really risks also duplicating responsibilities already held by the PUC, our office, DEP, and other state entities. Experience in other states shows that public financing delivers the greatest value when its function is more focused, such as on large-scale transmission with clear system-wide benefits. Narrowing the authority's mandate to the financing of targeted projects to accelerate build-out and reduce project risks could improve the implementation, reduce overlaps, and allow such an authority to build expertise where it's most needed. Second, the bill grants financing and bonding powers without sufficient guardrails. As drafted, the authority appears to be able to issue unlimited revenue and municipal bonds and provide loans and grants without defined criteria for project eligibility, public benefit, or cost effectiveness. Public financing is most effective when it's tied to transparent standards, such as identified grid needs, quantifiable benefits to ratepayers, and coordination with regional planning entities. Narrowing the authority, identifying guiding criteria for investments, and strengthening the governance structure of the authority would strengthen investor confidence, fiduciary responsibility, limit ratepayer exposure, and ensure that public debt is used only when the benefits are clear and broadly shared. Third, the bill should more clearly define the authority's public-private role. This type of public authority may work best as a targeted facilitator, using targeted public financing tools to de-risk certain development activities and attract private investment, rather than acting as a developer and owner-operator itself. Activities such as permitting, stakeholder engagement, and right-of-way identification are areas where public support can add significant value. These early-stage activities are often less attractive to private investors, but are critical for public buy-in and the ultimate success of projects. A more effective approach would be to prioritize coordination and targeted early investments that de-risk projects and advance them to the point where private capital becomes viable. When used strategically, public financing authority can bridge financing and institutional gaps that often prevent projects from moving forward without displacing private capital. This model also reduces legal complexities in the bill and ensures authority complements rather than competes with existing entities.
Thank you, Ms. Cullen. Would you like to just finish up?
Sure. So I think, as many have said here today, we are very interested in exploring public financing tools. I think FAME has some interesting existing language or language as sunset that may be worth looking at in this space, and a more targeted scope, I think, could help us reap the benefits of that.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions at this time from Ms. Cullen? Seeing none, we thank you very much for your time and testimony this afternoon. And we will end today's hearing with Deirdre Snyder from the PUC. Oh, okay. After the legislators. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. Did you sign up, Representative Sobolewski?
I didn't know I had to.
Right over there. Good.
Wait till the end.
Yes, please go ahead and sign up while we. All right, I'll sign you up, sir. Will do. Thank you, Representative. I thought you were just here to hang out with us this afternoon, truly,
I always do.
since I didn't see that. Thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you for the, your forbearance, Ms. Schneider.
Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Deirdre Schneider, testifying neither for nor against LD 838 on behalf of the Public Utilities Commission. I'm not going to read my testimony since it sounds like what is being envisioned is very different than what my testimony is addressing. I would just say that we would welcome anything that would reduce mechanisms to reduce costs to ratepayers, and we would be happy to continue discussions with the sponsor and stakeholders. I'll take any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Was there anything in particular from your testimony you want to make sure that we address?
I mean, I think some of the things that we were concerned was just making sure if you have a board, that the board has sufficient expertise. If there's an executive director, there's more stuff in there about what their qualifications would be. I think we were unclear on some of the provisions, so I don't want to go over that. And I think the biggest part of this we've highlighted in there is some of the regional work we've done. And through that regional work, getting transmission hopefully at a lower cost and less risk to ratepayers.
Questions for Ms. Schneider at this time? Thank you for this. We will bring you back for the work session if needed. Thank you. So seeing that, I invite any legislators who would like to testify to please come on up with our gratitude. Welcome, Representative.
I don't have to sign up.
Well, I'll sign you up here. I got you. I got you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Senator Lawrence, Representative Sachs, and I do apologize for the mistype on my statement there, Representative, and distinguished members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technologies Committee. My name is Representative Mike Sobolewski, and I'm here today to speak in opposition to the bill establishing the Maine Clean Energy Authority. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony on behalf of the people I represent. I oppose the creation of the Maine Clean Energy Authority. Maine is already one of the highest tax states in the nation, and we have the oldest population in the country. Our residents, especially seniors on fixed incomes, are already stretched to the breaking point. Adding yet another authority with new budgets, new staff, and new mandates only deepens the financial strain on people who can least afford it. This bill also continues a troubling pattern of shifting power away from citizens and towards centralized state control. By creating a new unelected authority with broad influence over energy policy, infrastructure, and spending, the state takes more from the people while giving them less to say. It moves Maine further towards the model where government stands above the people instead of serving them. Government is supposed to be accountable and subservient to the citizens, not the other way around. Creating another authority with sweeping powers pushes Maine in the wrong direction and erodes principles of local control, transparency, and self-government for Maine values, that Mainers value. And I'd like to just say also that I've heard a couple of comments today, reduce cost to ratepayers. I've heard that many, many times in the last 4 years, either in committee or out on the floor of the House. And my electric bill's gone from $40 to over $100. Not once have we done it. Have we reduced ratepayers to anybody? And public financing, although I understand that, is also taxpayer financing, and it's tax funding. So I strongly urge the committee to reject this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sobolewski, and I'm sure Representative Ziegler would as well. Any questions from the committee at this time? Seeing none, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here this afternoon. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on this bill? Before we do so, before I close the public hearing, I will just say our thanks to Senator Lawrence and urge him to, now that you've had the benefit of lots of testimony regarding this language, to please get the committee language and to interested parties prior to the next work session so that we know what we're dealing with.
So on that topic, I'm not sure we're going to be able to come up with specific language for the next work session. And that's one of the problems with this idea is whenever we come up with specific language, we're arguing against the language. We need to have a talk about concepts and ways in which other states have done this, I believe.
We can certainly talk about that. I will say this is a second session bill of a very big topic. And having the committee write a bill regarding this big topic is not something that I would prefer, but I will, of course, leave it to the committee to decide. So seeing no other folks testify, I will close the work session on the public hearing on LD 838. Lindsay, I'm just going to look to you. Any other announcements for the committee? Any announcements from committee members? Checking my paper for Representative Wadsworth. That concludes our business today.